Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Very honored to rise, as always, for the people of Timmins James Bay on a very, very important issue, which is the situation facing senior citizens in this country and the systemic failure to ensure that those who built this nation are able to retire and live in the dignity they deserve. You know, I was just speaking today with the head of the Cochrane Food Bank because we're attempting to get supplies of food up into Fort Albany First Nation that's been under an evacuation and flooding, and they tell us the shelves are empty. And if you go into the grocery stores in Northern Ontario, the bins where people used to fill up with food, those bins are nearly empty. The cost of living crisis is hitting seniors more than anyone. And they have nothing to show for it other than these incremental increases that might buy them a Tim Hortons coffee, but is not going to put food on the table at this time. We have to look at this in a larger picture, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the absolute failure when seniors needed us, the people who raised us, built our society, brought us up from being children to adults, and when they needed us, we weren't there. I look at what happened in COVID, in long-term care, the privatized long-term care facilities, the absolute squalor that elders were left in and died in, so bad that the army was sent into Quebec in order to try and keep people alive. I mean, you send the army into disaster zones. You shouldn't be sending them into facilities that are run by provinces to protect and to look after senior citizens. We saw this in Ontario, where the death rates in the privatized care homes were staggeringly high, and afterwards, Doug Ford built this iron ring of protection around all those investors so they wouldn't be held accountable for failing to keep seniors alive during the pandemic. You know, Mr. Speaker, I was talking to a widow today who needs to get her teeth fixed. She has a right to have dignity. She doesn't have to get, the plates put in. She wants to have her teeth fixed. It's an $8,000 bill. She's a widow. And we have the Conservatives filibustering and trying to stop seniors from getting dental care. And the Bloc, Québécois, are supporting the attack on senior citizens in this country from getting dental care. I can't think of anything more shameful than that, because, I don't know if the Bloc or the Conservatives ever knocked on a door, but when I knocked on door after door after door, I talked to seniors who said to me, I can't afford to have my teeth fixed. Some people might think that's not that important, but that is so important for your dignity, for your sense of health. This is why New Democrats pushed for a national dental care plan that this year will include senior citizens. So the Bloc and Conservatives can fight this all they want, but we will make sure that by the end of this year, we can phone those widows back and say, that $8,000 bill you're facing that you can't afford to pay, it will be paid because you deserve it, and you deserve better. We are very interested in Bill C-319. I mean, I remember and this issue of fixing the shortfalls in the pensions, but obviously it doesn't go far enough. I remember just a few years ago when Stephen Harper flew to Davos, to the World Economic Forum, where he announced the Canadian seniors, they were just getting it a little too good, and he was going to increase the age of the old age pension. He didn't bother to tell Canadians that. He went to tell the world's elites at Davos, at the World Economic Forum, to tell Klaus Schwab, to whisper in his ear, Canadian senior citizens are getting too good a deal. I'm going to raise the age. And the Liberals ran on, we're going to fight that. We are going to make sure that we restore the age. And then the Liberals, what did they do in their budget? They created two classes of senior citizens. They told all our senior citizens, 74 and under, tough luck, get by, it's not too bad. You got your health. We're going to give a small incremental increase to those 75 and older. I was recently, just before inflation hit, I was underground in a gold mine in Timmins. And that's tough work. And I met a 70-year-old man working the jackleg drills. And you have to be in the best health to run a jackleg drill because it does massive destruction to the body. And he told me at 70 years old he had to go back underground to work the drills because he couldn't afford to look after his sick wife. That's the situation in Canada. So to say that, well, he's under 75, he doesn't need a top-up on his pension is an insult. But it's also an insult to say that if we just top up 65 to where they are at 75, that will get people through in a time of high inflation. It's not going to get them through. Any senior citizen will tell you that. What we need, Mr. Speaker, are much broader systemic changes to deal with an aging population in a way that we have failed. Certainly the issue of access to dental care is an important first step. We need a housing strategy that works. It's not a housing strategy where, you know, the member for Stornoway, who lives off the taxpayer's dime with his personal chef, goes on about all the gatekeepers stopping building. He's attacking the municipalities for being gatekeepers. That's not going to get us housing. What we need are seniors housing. We need a national plan to actually build seniors housing. That's cooperative housing. That is reasonable housing. The Liberals promise it. Oh my God, you've never seen so much promises on housing. But they're just, well, where are they? We just never see it. So it's a systemic failure there. But in terms of the inability of people to feed themselves in a time of high inflation and the pitiful amount of money that they get in old age security, this is a broader, more systemic issue that has to be addressed. We have to rethink CPP. We have to look at the ability of people while they're working to add into their own old age security funds, so that if they're working and saving, that fund will go with them wherever they retire. And that, contrary to the member for Stornoway, which by the way has a 19-room mansion, who calls that a tax. Investing in pensions is not a tax. The Conservatives keep saying that because they don't want to put the basic funds in place to have a proper pension. But we need to look at a proper funded pension system. So I look at Bill C-319, and certainly we'll support it going forward. It's an incremental step. It's a baby step along a long path, but it doesn't get us there. What gets us there is saying that we cannot live as a society with values where seniors are out on the streets begging, which I see on Elgin Street now. Senior citizens, widowed grandmothers begging on the streets because they can't pay their outrageous rents. They can't pay the costs at the grocery stores. There's not enough in their pension. So I think we need a broader discussion, and it should be a discussion that's across party lines. How do we reform CPP so people can make the investments into a public pension? Not a privatized RRSP. I know a lot of people who tried to put money into RRSPs. They tell me they're never ever going to be retired. It'll never be sufficient. So we have to address those shortfalls, because we have to send a message now, and it's an important message to send to senior citizens, to admit that Canada has failed them. That Canada is failing them, but Canada is not going to continue to fail them at a time of high inflation, of high cost, of high rent, of high medical and needing access to whether it's pharmacare and dental care. That Canada will do for them what they did for us, which is that they held us in their arms, they raised us, they took on immense sacrifices so that we could be the society that we are today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.